In the 1940s and 1950s, you knew Arnold Beichman, who later, shortly thereafter, became a fairly well respected conservative intellectual.
He was in some ways, he was just a marvelous person because he was the kind of person who had been a newspaper person for many years.
He was the editor at PM Magazine.
Yes,
And
he was no, he was the city editor of PM, but that was a much more important job than if he had the job at the Times, which was your national newspaper, and would report on things from Wisconsin and California and so on. This wanted to be a national paper, but they just didn't have the funding for that. So there was mostly wonderful reporting from New York, but uh, Wisconsin. Where is that? Where is Wisconsin? We know where Wisconsin is. They they had a lot of trouble establishing uh, their ground.
how were you two associated?
Well, he was a very important person in my life for, I think I figured it out to 5 months, because I was looking for a job in a common office that had been working on some local thing. I forget what it was. And a lot of people were standing around, and I said, this project ends in less than a week. So as long as I got all these people here, I'll tell everybody that I'll be looking for a job next Tuesday. And if anybody has a job for starting next Tuesday, I'll be very glad to consider it. Which is really very nervy because they were all way above me in salary and everything else. So saying that I would consider it was,
Was this a job at PM?
no, just uh, he had left PM. He had been the city editor, but the paper was about to fail, and he had been off the paper for quite some time. But there was a sort of people who were old hands at PM had gotten together. I don't know what I was doing there, but I was standing around and I was welcomed. And Arnold Beichman immediately put his hand on my arm and said, "Are you truly looking for a job?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Well, I will hire you as my assistant because I've heard an awful lot of good stuff about you. And that can mean anything. Anything that I'm working on that I need somebody to look something up on, or I need somebody to say this isn't true because I've investigated it." He said, "I think you'll find it very interesting, but you have to be very careful. You can't go shooting your mouth off." And I did work for him for, what am I going to tell you the exact 5 months. Uh, and then I got a real job. I mean, this job that I had, sometimes he would forget to pay me, and I have to remind him. And he was a very good newspaper man, but he was not a good executive.
He started as a liberal at PM, but he later became a staunch conservative.
I don't think so.
He was a very radical left winger when you met him.
Not when I knew him.
Oh.
Not when I knew him.
He
yes.
later became
when
quite...
he was at PM,
yeah,
which was before I knew him. He was very he was a liberal anti-communist. But since he saw communism in practically every speck of dust in the ground. That didn't give him much room to be liberal about anything. He felt that liberal movements were good, but that they had been invaded by communists, so they weren't so good. And he had that kind of feeling for everything in what you or I would call a liberal movement. We believe in the right of unions to organize and to do all the things that union has to be able to do, that the courts were considering. And they fought for unionism, but it wasn't a liberal fight. It was a fight for job security for them. You would never say that they were big liberals. They were fighting to expand their jobs, as were everybody else in the country.